So, with this rocket, I'm going to fly to Venus, Mercury, and return back to Earth. I tried many versions. Here you can see the top part with the heat shields that we will use for air braking on Venus. So let's get on with the launch. Off we go. Here I turn off the engines until we get in orbit. Give some more power. And now we can let go of the side boosters. There we go. Adjusting the angle a bit. And now we can continue to get into orbit. Okay. Let's navigate to Venus. I just cleaned up the debris right there. And now I'm time warping to the transfer window. So right now I'm adjusting the angle of the rocket so it's in the right direction for the transfer. There we go. Now a time warp to the transfer window. Okay, a few more adjustments. And there we go. Running a bit low on the fuel of this main rocket. So we can let go of it and continue. Turning on the RCS so we can make small adjustments for our arrival at Venus. And there we go. I will bring it closer to Venus itself. Some more adjustments. That's good enough. And now we're time warping over to Venus. Gonna make some more small adjustments. So I'm keeping this a bit above 20 kilometers so we can do the air brake. We will air brake with the rocket a few times to slow it down without using fuel. So now I'm adjusting again the angle of the rocket so we enter at the right angle. Time warping over there. So now we're in the upper atmosphere and you can already see the heat. If we would aim lower than 20 kilometers, it would get too hot and the rocket would burn and explode. You can see the heat shields protecting the rocket and also heating up quite a lot. So this takes a lot of trial and error to figure out how high you can go, or actually how low. So that was our first break, and you can see we are already in orbit, but it's still a bit big. In a little bit I will disconnect the fuel tank, and after landing on Venus I want to reconnect to the fuel tank. So we want to have the fuel tank in a quite low orbit. So here we go again. Same thing, just braking more. Alright, let's look at our orbit again. As you can see, quite a bit lower, but we can do one more. So I'll do one more here. As you can see, I'm micro adjusting the rocket while we go. Otherwise it would actually flip and burn. So it's very important you keep it exactly straight with the arrow. Alright, that looks pretty good. Nice and small orbit. So next is to disconnect the fuel tank, but it also needs to be brought back into a full orbit, otherwise it would burn in the atmosphere. So here we're disconnecting. I will first adjust the rocket itself, so I will lower it down a little bit so we can actually make a landing. That's maybe a bit low. So now I'm switching to the fuel tank, let's call it that, the main rocket. And I will speed it up a bit here so that the orbit gets a bit bigger, so it will not burn in the atmosphere. A little bit more. And now I give it power to give it a safe orbit around the planet. Okay, switching back to the landing rocket. We can time warp to where we enter the atmosphere. And we do the same thing as before. Only this time we will actually make the landing instead of like skipping over the planet. So now we're below the 20 kilometers mark. And you see where we keep descending. And the heat shields protect us nicely from the heat. I just let go of the main heat shield there. We don't need it anymore. Oh, not the main heat shield, actually the rear heat shield. And I've extended the legs. Now I will deploy the parachutes. There we go. And we're almost at the surface of Venus. Okay, it's a bit rocky. Let's see how we're doing. I also disconnected the main heat shield there, as you can see. It's already dropping. And there we go. We safely landed. So, on to the next part of the mission. Just taking off immediately. I keep the rocket quite straight here because the atmosphere of Venus is so thick. It seems to be more efficient to do it this way. Okay, the first stage can go now. So now we just have the small rocket left. And we will try to reconnect it with the, let's say, fuel tank. So we're trying to get back into orbit. And there's also our transfer window. Okay, now I'm time warping over to the rendezvous point where we almost meet with the fuel tank. We're pretty close now. It's about 1500 meters. I'm speeding this up a bit because I don't want to go too fast. There it is. Let's see how the docking goes. So I'm making adjustments here with the RCA to align our speed and direction. Aligning with the fuel tank. This looks very good. Making some small adjustments. Bang! Alright, so now I'll put fuel back into the small rocket. And we can go on to our next target, which is Mercury. As you see, this is all looking pretty good. We have a lot of fuel, which we will need. So we're time warping to the right location to transfer to Mercury. There's our transfer window. Making some adjustments to our angle. Alright, oops. Forgot to turn off the engine of the small rocket. A little bit too far, so I'll make some adjustments. Too fast, I should say. So let's have a look at our encounter. I'll make some adjustments so we get closer to Mercury. Something like that. And there we are. So now I'm transferring fuel from the bottom tank to the top tank, because they can be disconnected. And that will save some weight to brake the rocket. There we go. So it's almost full, which is great. Oh. Alright, so now I can disconnect it. So now we just have the small rocket with a big fuel tank. We're going pretty fast, so we have to brake a lot here. Over 2000 meters per second. So we will burn quite a lot of fuel actually to just brake here. I'm making some small adjustments here just to keep the distance from Mercury at around 50 kilometers. We can see the line of the orbit already bending a bit. So when we slow down enough, I will get a bit closer to Mercury. Let's do that now. Alright. Turn on the engine again. Still going pretty fast. A little bit too fast for my liking. but it's almost there. So now we will get into an orbit, as you see, and then it goes very quickly. Okay, so the next step, we will disconnect from the fuel tank. So the fuel tank will stay in its own orbit, and we can now just land the small rocket, and then after the landing we will reconnect again with the fuel tank to refuel, so we can fly back to Earth. So here at the lowest point I'm gonna actually bring it back to horizontal speed of 0. So we will drop straight to Mercury. There we go. Adjust the angle. We're still 24 kilometers above the surface. I'm speeding this up a bit. And making some entry burns, I would say. Preparing for landing. It is very important not to go too fast here. And this can be a bit tricky, so I'm just being very careful here. Just a few hundred meters above the ground. This is looking good. And there we are. Landed on Mercury. Still have about 1/3 of the fuel left. So now we just have to try to reconnect with the fuel tank. So there we go. There's no atmosphere here, so we can go straight into an orbit. There's our transfer window. I give it a bit more speed here. Oop. Not much fuel left, but we should have just enough. Okay. Getting to our meeting point. There you can see the fuel tank. %7 of fuel left. But this is looking good. And give it a bit more speed. This tiny rocket is very easy to brake. Just with the RCA. Speeding it up a bit. Should be getting close. There it is. Okay, so there you see we're braking with the RCA. Let's hope for a good docking. Just making small adjustments to align the connecting ports. Yeah. There we go. Perfect. So I'm moving fuel back into the small rocket. As you can see, we have quite a lot of fuel. A little bit extra, so we can use the fuel tank on the first part on our return to Earth and then disconnect when it gets empty. So navigating back to Earth, moving to the transfer window now. There we go. Need to speed up quite a lot. We also need to watch the fuel in the main fuel tank. So when it gets to 0, we need to disconnect it. Oops. Move out of the way. And we can continue. Okay, let's move over to Earth so we can see how we arrive. We want to move it a bit closer again to Earth to get into an orbit. That's a bit too much. Something like that. That's perfect. Time warping over now. Alright, we're back at Earth. It's still quite some fuel left. And I will start braking here. So we will soon see the line change into an orbit around Earth. There we go. I will brake as much as possible with just a little bit of fuel left. Oh, this actually looks pretty decent. So I can just enter immediately. Yeah, so I will disconnect the pod with the heat shield. Which will land back on Earth. You can hear a tiny rocket exploding while it burns in the atmosphere. But we are fine. So the last thing to do here is to deploy the parachute when we're close to the surface. And there we go. Almost back home from a long mission to both Venus and Mercury. That's it. Here you can see the mission log, everything we did, which is quite a list. And that's how you do it in one go.